Hi everybody, welcome to the Movers Corner Financial Wellbeing Series. My name is Banele Shabalala.
And I'm Edwin Libuso, and today we have Mr. Andile Magubani, better known as Enza. But before he introduces himself, I'd like to take this moment to thank Capello Msanga for being our host today, and
Shout
our
out.
media partner, obviously, ATA Radio.
Shout out, guys.
This wouldn't be possible without them. And over to you, Enza.
Yeah, Edwin, thanks for the introduction. As you had mentioned, my name is Enza Makubane. I'm a financial advisor, more specifically a wealth advisor at the moment. I've been in the industry for just over 3 years now. Started off in short-term insurance, long-term insurance. Um, Came through the industry in finance and investment now, in portfolio management. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. Thank you for having me, gentlemen, both of you first and foremost, and I look forward to having great interaction.
Looking forward to it too. Look, you said some very key words there.
There was a lot of
Long-term, short-term,
financials.
financial well-being. And I'm sure there's a couple of guys actually sitting at home right now watching us and they're thinking to themselves, what do these words even mean in the financial industry? But don't worry about that, guys, for now. We'll start it with bite sizes and then we'll actually take it up a notch. And on that point, I think we should start with the critical question. What is a credit score?
In simple layman's term, a credit score, you can attribute it to your criminal record, for an example. You can attribute it to back in high school when you have a disciplinary book. It's just a reference to creditors that they have to say, over the past 2 years, 5 years, we pay ganja. How do you treat money? What relationship with money? Is it a positive relationship? It means that you only have ticks, or do you have a lot of demerits? So you have a negative relationship with money. And that's what forms the basis of creditors to use when you engage them to apply for credit.
So just to lay on that, so it's somewhat like when you put on a sleeve, but it's like a collection of your behavior, so to speak. Which
Yeah.
don't want to like in the workplace, which are like if you're troublesome.
Yeah.
So something like so for me, I think the biggest thing is what is a good credit score and how is it measured from what?
So you see, it's very subjective, if I put it that way, yeah? Because a bad credit score doesn't necessarily um, decredit you from applying for credit. No, that doesn't expel you from accessing credit. However, only difference is that the better your credit score is, the more favorable the terms of the agreement is. So I think on ClearScore, the maximum credit score is 706 points. So the closer you are to that 706, that means that the better your relationship is with money. It means that you are more reliable. So when banks or creditors engage you, they say, okay, you have credit score of 706. That means you maintain your credit payments, you maintain your obligations. Whatever credit agreement that you are in currently, you've upheld it. So then creditors can give you more favorable terms. However, if someone has what's commonly termed as a bad credit score, say you have a credit score of 580, that doesn't naturally expel you from receiving credit. Only thing that does is says, this is a bit of a riskier client, so I can't give them R1,000,000. Yeah, but I'm willing to give them 250,000 to see how they treat the 250,000, and then in a year, 2 years, we can revisit this engagement.
Actual facts, right now, when you're putting it in that term, it kind of feels like a credit score is more of a measurement of trust in the financial industry. I think if we sum it up, it seems like that. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah.
It's basically a measurement of trust. These are the number of elements that go into it, but it's a measurement of how trustworthy you are. And the higher the number,
Yeah,
the more trustworthy you are.
that's probably the most accurate way to put it.
All right, cool. But with everything in that sense, we all like to say, look, trust is earned, right? So in this case, how do I actually build the credit score? How do I build the trust with the financial industry? How does one go about that?
So to say that this is where it really starts getting interesting, because there's so many things that are out there, so many instruments that are out there for us to utilize, of which we don't have the knowledge of. You know what I'm saying? So the most common way that people are aware of, you've gone to varsity, you've studied, you now have a job, you try to go apply for a car, you you know you're earning well, you know you can afford a car, you know you can afford the down payment, you can afford the installments, but the bank says you don't have a credit score. Yeah? So only thing the bank says that we don't know your relationship. There's no reference point for your relationship with money. So we don't know where to put you in that scale of risk. So then what do people go do? They said, okay, go and take out a phone contract. Go to Two Words, Malay, whatever, get a store account, have it up open for 2-3 months, make your purchases, pay off, be reliable, and so forth. Yeah? That's probably the most common way people bolster their credit score. But there's so many other ways that are out there that you can start doing for yourself while you're still younger, or you can start doing for your children while they're still younger. Yeah?
All right.
So what you find in some instances that someone has a child, you're affluent, you're doing well for yourself, or not even affluent, you have a good credit score, you're reliable, you make your payments, and so forth. So what happens then? You say you have a child, 10 years old, 12 years old. You go to your bank and say, bank, can I please put my child as a co-payer on my credit card? And then their credits will be conjoined to your usage of your credit card.
Wow.
And then your child starts developing a credit record at a young age.
I didn't know
Okay,
that.
I just got schooled, guys.
You know, there's a lot of tools available to us that we're just not knowledgeable about, and we just don't go out there to find the knowledge. Yeah. So I think it's very important. Sorry, before we're going too far, it's very important to consult, guys. Yeah, I know we.
Enza, just to come in and interject there.
Yeah.
Consult way.
Yeah.
Because I think we do have these conversations, but the conversations are had amongst ourselves, and we are giving each other the same advice that we were given. Go open in what clothing account, and to be honest, the guys just there's a clothing account that I paid off. It's still on my record. I fought with them yesterday, for it to be removed because also and I want you to touch on it. I don't know if you are quite versed with regards to that. Is the fact that your certain references appear on different credit bureaus.
Yeah.
Like you go to like a TransUnion and only certain things appear. The other one isn't updated. How do we solve that? But that's what also is affecting credit scores.
Even with that, you find that these different places or platforms you go to look at your credit score, they rate credit differently. You know, you clear score 760 or somewhere else, the maximum 730 and so forth. That's right. Yeah. So when it comes to correlating, creating a credit score, that's highly reliant on companies sharing information with each other. You know what I'm saying? There's no one necessarily tracking your expenditure just designated for that. You know, it's a relationship that's built around these companies, and they're saying, okay, these are all our creditors at this institution. Institution B says these are all our creditors, and then that information then gets sent to TransUnion, whoever, that then collate the information, and then it states, okay, this is how you are working. You've missed a payment charge, yeah? So when one company is not sharing the information within the collective, that's when you start finding that at this bureau, this is listed, and somewhere else it is listed. And also, naturally, administration in each company is different. So the speed in which they update their records and so forth, that also changes.
And Mina, that's my frustration, Okuti. They're very quick to share Okuti, Mr. Payment. But once you've paid it up, now the onus is on you to get it sorted out, which is
it's unfortunate.
It didn't work out, but it's fine.
It's unfortunate, but in instances like that, go to your creditor. Yeah, ask your creditor for a clearance certificate. Once you've cleared your debt, go to your creditor and say, listen, I was in debt, I've paid my debt, can I please have a clearance certificate? So when you do go apply for a car, which you didn't qualify for 2 months ago, you go there and say, listen, I know this is still showing up on my credit record, but here's my clearance certificate from the creditor. I'm still waiting for it to be cleared on the system. You know, administratively, there's only so much you can do to make it speed up administratively, but you can start collecting those paperwork on your side and just try to stay ahead of the mark.
That's actually eye-opening. Wow. All right. It's so weird though that they actually have a system. It's like you know back in primary, guys. Not so long ago, by the way. We used to have
Did you say
not so long ago.
So I'm trying to move on from that as quickly as possible.
Look, guys, not so long ago, we had this chart whereby you had either stars or you had black marks, or when you did well. it seems like the system seems to be more focused on the dots, the black marks, versus the stars. That's how I feel. I'm not sure how many people do feel like that. But look, if you feel the same way, maybe write a comment there before you like and share, and tell us your story about actually how you've actually either benefited or you've actually been pulled back by the system when it comes to the demerits or and actually updating of your information with the credit score. I just want to get the conversation going on the comments.
Yeah.
But on that part, look, you talked about it.
Sorry, but to cut you short, I didn't address your question you had earlier about who do we consult. So what's very important is that out of all professionals, whether it's your financial advisor, your accountant, your lawyer, go to one. If you're not sure who to address, go to either or. And when you sit in front of your accountant and say, listen, this is my financial problem, and then within his mandate, he's gonna say, okay, I can help you with this issue. Or you can say that because he also has knowledge of the industry, you can say, okay, as an accountant, I can't help you in this regard. This is a problem for a financial advisor. The same way I get a lot of clients also that we do the investment, and they say, and I'm also self-employed, I want to get my taxes and A, B, and C done. So I'm like, okay, cool. I don't do that stuff. But please, if you has a reference, refer to an accountant, go to this accountant, they'll help you set you up, And that's the working of the industry. We all have a broad knowledge of it, but we all specialize in certain aspects of it. And we legally, and within regulation, we only can do what we are mandated to do. And anything outside of our mandate, we give those those referrals.
Okay.
No, 100%. But for me, I think it's a misconception as well. Some people make us. Right? When you think financial advisor, the first thing that clicks in your mind is you have to have acquired a certain level of wealth to consult a financial advisor. So I think that's what is the root of the problems and the misinformation that keeps being reshared amongst ourselves is the fact that we assume for me to go see you Enza, if I didn't know you, I'd rather talk to Bane because I know him. Like, dude, I needed to build a credit score, yeah, bro. Because the assumption is the fact that in order for me to go see a financial advisor, financial planner, I have to have X amount. And that's how it's, to be honest, that's how when you look at ads, for instance, like your big investment ads, it's always wealth creation. It's never, yeah, you're a random guy, you earn 10K, don't buy a GTI. Let's say. Let's.
Oh, I'm sorry for this guy. I love the brand, but yeah, I know it's like this. Yeah, it's another episode.
So rather than buying it because you earn in 10K, bro, like, yeah. So how do we ensure that we make financial advice accessible to the guys of which, like, from a layman's, from an ordinary guy, where to get
I
that
believe
advice?
I believe our government has made a very good effort in trying to make financial advice accessible. And the reason why I say that is that one, there's professional fees. You can go to a financial advisor purely just for advice, just to go and sit with them, consult. You don't want to invest, you don't want to do anything. You just started into the work market. You're 22 years old or whatever. You're earning your 15,000 rand, but you know that there's value in sitting down with someone and developing a plan getting into your retirement. So you sit down with this person and say, listen, this is where I am in my life. This is what I want. These are my goals, aspirations in retirement. This is my plan A, B, and C. Maybe I have a child, I don't have a child, whatever is your current situation. You lay it all bare for him and say, okay, what's my best route of action? What can I do? I want to buy a house in 5 years. I want to do this. I want to do this. How can you help me? What would you advise me to do? In instances like that where you're not trying to invest with the guy, maybe the advisor will say, yo, listen, I'm going to do you this courtesy. We'll have this conversation. Send you on your way after you've done consulting. Or maybe you'll say, okay, cool. I need to cover my overhead. I need to pay electricity, A, B, and C. I'm going to charge you 800 rand for this session. And you paid 800 rand once off, but now you said you have a whole plan. You know what I'm saying? And what's the value in that? The 800 rand becomes minuscule in comparison to a 10-year plan. Yeah? when we want to get into our diet, we go to a dietitian, we spend that one point whatever for a 3-month eating plan. And that's the mindset we should get into. That you go to an advisor, even if you're not in a financial position right now, start investing. But so you can understand what's out there, what suits your lifestyle, and what do you need to be, or what kind of monthly contributions would have to be making for you to start reaching these goals and hitting these targets. But at least you're at home now with the knowledge, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I can't afford it," but maybe you can. Investment starts as little as 500 rand to open up a unit trust, a monthly contribution.
Guys, that's less than the amount you spend clapping.
Just say.
That's a different conversation
Just
altogether.
say.
It's a different conversation.
No, 100%. I think you put a lot into a perspective, and I'll hand over to Ubane. My thing is also, and I like what you touched on, because sometimes it takes a very small amount of investment for you, because there's a lot of pitfalls that you would then avoid it, which would cost you a lot of more money than the 800 rand for the session.
100%, 100%. On that part, look, we've talked about investments, we've talked about advice. Maybe let's go into something as simple as debt. Is debt equal? What is the difference between good and bad debts? I've heard those names. Can you just maybe differentiate between the two? And then maybe so we can lay it out for guys to understand that, look, maybe this kind of debt is good for A, B, C, and D. This kind of debt is bad for A, B, C, and D. Is there such thing as totally good debt and totally bad debt?
You see, debt is, in all honesty, there's no real difference in debts or getting credit. You know, your credit card is still a debt. It's that short-term 12-month loan you take out is still a debt. Only the real terminology difference between debts and credit is just the term you take it out on. You know, and then when it comes to looking at whether it's good or bad credit, I know industry professionals say it differently. Good debts taking out a house or mortgage, and bad debts is paying for your car or whatever. Quite simply, good debts is any debt that you can afford. Bad debts is what you cannot afford.
Did you almost say, okay.
You know,
You should have said yes.
no,
You were going to say yes.
no. So simply with that, I'm trying to say that if you can afford to pay 20,000 rand for a bond, and you go and take out a 10,000 rand bond, that's good. You can afford it. The same principle with a car. If you can afford, if a bank's offering you a car installment of 15,000 rand a month, and you say, no, I don't want such an expensive car, I'm gonna take one out for 10,000 rand a month, and you buy your GTR. That's still good debt because
it's getting bought.
no, I'm saying you can still call it good debt because you're nowhere near the threshold of affordability.
Yeah,
You know, you're still far from the threshold. And as much as yes, a car depreciates and so forth, but I can tell you personally, in the industry that I am, the client meetings, driving up and down, and living almost an hour away from the office, a car is for me an investment because I can't work without it. You know, I can't get from A to B. The convenience of having it. So for someone to then say buying a car is bad debt, not in my life, not for me personally. So that's why I rather account to saying, can you afford it? Does it put pressure on you financially? If it does, it's bad debt. Because even if it's a house, if you're barely scraping through your bond repayments, that's bad debt because you can't afford it. And almost certainly within a year to 5 years, you're gonna default something. Because you know what I'm saying, you're so close. And then that becomes bad debt, and then now use foreclosures, your credit record, and so forth and so forth. But you've been fed this story or this narrative of property, good investment, property, bonds is a good debt to have. No, man, it's very subjective. It's person by person. If you can afford it and it's well within your means, that's good debt.
On that point, before we move on to the next subject, just quickly, can you just let us know what do you mean by affording? Because we can sit here, we can all earn 5,000 rand, but our affordability might not be the same. Can you just maybe expand it just a little bit on that part as to how do you reach
just
affordability?
before you go there, I think there's again a lot of misconceptions around affordability, especially again when you go to the example of a car. Affordability for most people is installment. But we know, and yeah, you know, there's other costs that are related to owning a car. Yeah, bro. So I think the thinking around affordability needs to change, especially amongst young people. When you look at a car, even if it's an investment, like you said, but can you really afford it? Like all the
So,
costs associated.
and that's perfectly put. We need to understand what goes into our purchases. When you talk about affordability, we're not just talking about the premium, not just talking about the installments. Because we know that these things need to be maintained. If you bought a house above and beyond the bond, you know that there's levies, there's water, electricity, there's all these other things that are paid. So you might have a 10,000 rand bond, but your monthly expenditure is 15,000, all things considered. So that's references of affordability. And what's important to that, again, to take a step back when I say go consult, understand what you can afford. When you go and consult and you say, this is my pay step A, B, and C, and then oftentimes a good advisor will tell you, put X amount away for savings, put this amount, so now when in finance, you know, it's about pay yourself first. When you say pay yourself first, talk about your savings pocket. Take that money that if you set yourself up 20% of my salary, go into your savings. Take when your salary hits, 20% aside. You've paid your debt, you've paid all your obligations, and then now you're left with 10,000 rand. That's affordability. That's what the bank will call affordability. They look how much money you've left over after your current obligations. And then you, being an objective thinker, understanding, so okay, I also like to go to the club every other weekend, so I need to be putting aside 1.5 a weekend. I need to be putting aside for this trip and that trip. Then your 10,000 rand now becomes 5,000 rand, and then you can say, I afford 5,000.
I like that.
I like that. I like
love that.
I like that logic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
I love it. I love it. Maybe you can take us through to the next question, Adrian. But yeah, I actually love that.
Yeah. So the next question is the difference between debt counseling and alternative debt resolution. Because we know, like, for instance, we discussed about the possible pitfalls. We touched on accounts which remain on your credit record, pitfalls when purchasing your first vehicle, and we will touch on that in because this is the first of 4 episode series, so we'll dedicate an episode for that. But now, I want you to also just unpack the fact that, say, Edwin now is in a situation whereby his credit is in the bin. How do I come back? How do I? What are the tools that will help get back to a clean record? And I think most people get those calls, let's consolidate your debt, but they don't really understand, or let's put you under debt review, but they don't really understand, what does it mean? Yes, of course, it maybe decreases your monthly installments and saves you like $1,000, but in the grand scheme of things, what does that mean? What's the difference?
All right. So before you even get to the point where the bank is now calling you every day, wanting your money, there's a lot of remedial actions we can take before you reach that point.
Okay.
So when, again, you know that you've made the bad decision already. You've bought a car you don't afford. No, you've made this financial commitment that you can't afford. The decision is made. It's out there. All right, life moves on. But now you see that we're in COVID. The commissions you're making, the bonuses you're making aren't the same anymore. Lifestyle needs to change. Something's got to give. So before you reach that point of where you're not defaulting on your payments, you go to your creditor and say, listen, this is my situation. Yeah, I have a clean bill. I have a clean bill of health.
Before you go, I want to go to your credit. Do you mean I go to the store?
Yeah, you got because every department has a debt collection department, has a finance department. So you just call up the finance department and say, listen, can I speak to a debt collection or can I speak to a finance department?
Okay.
This is my story. Can you please transfer me to the appropriate person?
Okay.
You know? But then you speak to your creditor, you tell him, listen, this is my current situation. When I applied for this debt, this is where I was. Things have changed. Before I default on my payments, can you please restructure my agreement? And that's what it comes to. So now you've gone from a 5,000 rand a month 5-year term for your car. You say, okay, how can you afford? Kind of can afford 3.5. they restructure it. Now you're paying 3.5, but maybe increase your term for a year or 2 years. Ultimately, you might end up paying a bit more than what you would have been, but you've now removed the risk of defaulting. You've now removed the risk of your credit record going bad and having creditors after you and so forth.
So, with in terms of restructuring, so it doesn't necessarily affect you negatively.
No, it's not negative because you haven't defaulted. You haven't done anything. So this is now sort of an agreement between
Wow.
you and
Yeah,
your
but-
creditor.
So,
So
it's
your
the
credit-
act of defaulting, which basically, sorry to cut you.
Yeah.
So it's the act of defaulting which actually demerits you.
Yeah.
But making arrangements prior to
Yeah.
that actually is fine.
Because remember we spoke about this is when you talk about credit score, they're looking at your relationship with money. If you're mature enough to understand that something's got to give, I can no longer afford this, and you go take the first step. Because remember, guys, these companies want their money. That's their business model. They want their money back at the end of the day. So when you start defaulting, it affects their bottom line negative. And then not only is you are unable to pay, they now have to go employ people to chase after you.
They pay more.
You know what I'm saying?
Incurring more
So
costs.
there's all these remedial actions that companies and legislation uses to encourage people to pay because it just benefits everybody else. You know, companies would rather increase your term for a year or 2 years and ensure that their money is paid back and then some for the extra term as opposed to being stringent on it and saying, no, I want the money, knowing that in 3 months you won't be able to pay. And then they incur all that cost. So that's where you look at your alternative debt resolution. This is before you reach consolidation and review stage. Because generally, consolidation and review stage is after you default. That's when the term is you over indebted. You know, you've defaulted for 2-3 months. The bank is trying to call you. You're not picking up anymore. You see that 021 number. You're like, hey, maybe it's a job interview. Maybe it's the bank. And you're like, screw it. You know what I'm saying? So,
Go through colon.
yeah, exactly. See, so when you reach that stage, that's the troublesome part. You know, now the bank is incurring costs to make you pay. You know, and then now they must go get your car, auction it off. You know what I'm saying? The lengthiness of that process.
So just before we move on, and I did ask about the difference, right?
Yeah.
And you touched on the first one. If it's a case of invoice, you have a car, you just bought a car.
Yeah.
You are not even going to afford the 3.5. You just can't afford it. So what happens then?
So you see, obviously, it's on your creditor's discretion whether or not you guys can reach an agreement. If you can't, you can't. But then again, that's step one where you've just addressed it, and you can't reach an agreement. And then you go consult, and there's debt mediation and so forth. And that's now a third party that now you approach and say, listen, can you please go speak to my creditor on my behalf? I've tried, I've failed, or maybe you didn't even do the first part because maybe you didn't feel comfortable, you didn't know how to address it, you didn't know where to go, and so forth. You're like, okay, cool, let me rather go speak to a mediator. Then a mediator is just a third party that's going to speak on your behalf with the creditor. Oftentimes, if they're registered, they already have relationships with the major creditors, so they're able to kind of negotiate these deals for you. Yeah, and then again, they might charge you upfront, say, okay, for us to speak on your behalf, for 2,000 rand, whatever. They have their own professional fees. You know, but those are again the things you have accessible to you prior to you defaulting. Is to speak to your creditor. If I can give anyone advice at the moment that's feeling the pinch of COVID, that's currently in trouble, and you've been reliable, you've been paying, but at the cost of your family's well-being, and you know that you can't maintain this much longer, seek help. Go for your debt mediation, speak to someone, approach your creditors, arrange an agreement. The only difference being between doing it at this stage and doing it at debt counseling stage or debt review stage is the courts. That's the only difference. So when you're doing it prior to default, this is just an agreement between you and your creditor. The court's not involved, you guys reach an agreement, great. But once you start running away from their phone calls, they now have to seek action against you, and that brings in the courts. And then now you have judgments against you, and so forth and so forth. Trust, I've been down that road. It's horrific. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible place to find yourself in. And no matter how well how I did this mistake, I thought I knew money, I thought I had to handle money, and I didn't go consult. You know? And even being within the industry, I specialize in specific things. I might have general knowledge of other things, and I communicate to other departments and so forth, and the symbiosis. but specialize and not specialize. So I, in my head, no, I can solve this problem. I can resolve it. I'm able. I'm capable. Our next day, sheriff, we need to reach this stage, you know. You know what I'm saying? Now and then again, because when if you are ignoring a creditor's calls, almost certainly you're gonna ignore the sheriff's.
Of course.
The sheriff's first letter, second letter, you're gonna ignore those also. Because you tell us, I'm gonna sort it out. Guys, when it comes to debts, your debt review, debt conciliation, be present. You know, don't think this is something that's gonna go away. It won't. Be present. If you've reached a stage where you're now being summoned to court, go appear in front of the judge. Because again, when you appear in front of the judge, you can plead your case. Say, Judge, I'm defaulting because of A, B, and C. This is what I can afford. You know, can we do something? And then, again, up to the judge to say, no, maintain this, or no, you need to give your car back, or, you know, there's action to be taken. But if you're not present in those conversations, decisions will be made on your behalf.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, it will not be a decision that benefits you.
Look, thanks for that. Guys, I know it's probably like a dark cloud sitting on you right now because of what we're talking about. So just to shake it off just a little bit. Look, debt is debt, as you've actually alluded to. And on that part, I've read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki, and he calls it good debt. But in another sense, it's actually using debt for your benefit. Can you maybe just run us through with regards to how can you use debt from a personal point of view or a business point of view to actually further yourself?
Yeah.
So how do I use debt to actually take myself to the next level? Whether it's me, my lifestyle, my family, or is it Banele Incorporated, a company?
So, Banele, just to start off what you're saying, that's a very good point. In my experience, and again, this is just my personal experience, I've never heard of or met someone who was able to create wealth without debt. I've never. You know what I'm saying? I've never ever. If you go down to Cape Town where all our hedge funds are they call it leverage. In investments, when you talk about buying shares and so forth, our hedge funds, it's leverage. All leverage is just debt. It's just credit. All you're saying was, I want R1 million of equity, but I only have 200,000 rand to pay. And you put 200 rand, and then they leverage up to R1 million. You're just taking out debt. That's what it is. That's wealth creation. Again, this is my personal opinion. Please do not take this as financial advice. Go consult someone. Very important, because this is, when it comes to your finances, it's very subjective, it's very personalized. So please, this is my opinion, how I've interpreted it for my lifestyle and what's worked for me. Go see someone, go consult with someone. Make sure you're receiving advice that's specific for you and your situation. So when it comes to debt, you often hear the term cash is king. And people interpret cash as king and saying that I'm just buy everything cash, I'm buy everything cash. But then what happens when you keep buying everything cash? You have no liquidity. So you get 500,000 rand, you go out, you buy a 1-bedroom flat. 2 months later, your geyser bursts. You have no money to fix it. Yet you have 500,000 rand in equity, but you can't even afford to fix your geyser.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like yesterday, we saw a couple of cars, very luxurious cars, but the light is not working. So it's a liquidity thing as well. As much as going back to affordability, yes, you're driving this Merc, it's 1.5 million, the light is passing. So what that is now?
So you see, Edwin, it's a balancing act between your affordability, when you talk about affordability again, your premium. So when you're buying these things, you're looking at your installments, trying to balance your installments out with your maintenance cost, trying to balance it out with your liquidity.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to figure out which point is it, you know, because you go to a car shop and they say you need a 10% down payment, but you're affluent, you can afford more, you know, maybe you push it up to 20%, you know, but you still have money in the bank, so you're comfortable, you know. We're paying an additional amount of money, our bigger deposits is maybe negative, as if you're going to put down all your liquidity. You know, now you've paid 30% deposit, you've decreased your monthly premium significantly, great. But now on a month-to-month basis, you can't even afford to take your car for service. Now you're in trouble. But whereas if you just pay 10% and you maintain your liquidity, you're able to still live, still maintain the lifestyle and so forth. So it's a very intricate balancing act between affordability, your premiums, your maintenance, and your liquidity. So I don't know if I actually answered your question. I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, well, actual fact, you haven't fully on, but you kind of did when you said it's leverage. You can use it as leverage with regards to taking debt and empowering yourself to the next level. So but then it goes back to the affordability essentially.
Yeah, so look at it this way. I remember I once had a conversation with one of my friends who's in property, was considering buying an investment property, and he thought he had some money. He's like, I want to buy this property cash, A, B, and C. Great. So I was like, okay, cool. You could do that. You can afford it, and you're going to live off this 20,000 Rand. It's going to make every month. But if you go back and you look at some of the world's greatest investors, hedge funds, and so forth, they always talk about use the bank's money.
Yeah.
And so again, talk about, I've never met or heard of someone creating wealth without debt. Because they all preach the same thing: use the bank's money, use the bank's money, use the bank's money. So what that says then is that instead of going and buying one property for R1 million cash, you can buy 5 properties and pay down payments of 200,000 Rand for all 5 of them. Keep 100K in liquidity in your pocket, go invest it wherever you want to invest it, and then these properties are going to generate above your repayment rates. And then, but 10 years, 20 years later, you now have 5 properties that are all paid off, just because you use the bank's money. It might be a slightly longer process, but in the long run, using the bank's money tends to work out well.
So I'm just trying to practicalize it. Right? Let's say I have R1 million. Like, walk me through the steps. Because it's much easier to identify a property, call them and say, I have R1 million, I want the flat. It's a process that you just go to property 24, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So lender leverage. How does it go? Because I don't know how. If you gave me R1 million now, I don't know how I would go about it.
Again, I can't emphasize enough. Go consult.
So
you get R1 million, hit the jackpot. Before you go to SMG, please, first thing, go consult. Then go to SMG and buy your dream car. Sorry, that's SMG in my heart. So
dream cars live in SMG.
Yeah. But I was saying, like, with that, sorry, Edwin. What it is saying that instead of paying cash, or what you find that oftentimes they try and entice you to buy cash, because they say, if you buy cash, we'll give you a 5% deposit, or give you a 10,000 Rand money back. There's always some form of enticement, because for them it's a quicker sale. Even when you go buy your car, if you go buy your car cash, that's a different conversation. But oh my goodness, if you have a dealership friend, talk to him about buying cars cash and see his face. But anyways, I digress. So what then happens is, instead of putting down R1 million of your own money and then being stuck with no liquidity, you just go as any other buyer. You go to the bank and say, bank, I want R1 million loan. The bank says, okay, cool, we're going to buy a house, we're going to bond, 20-year bond, 10-year bond, whatever, we need that 13%, 10% down payment, we need 200K, you put it down. And that's what it is. And you can do that for 2 or 3 properties if you can afford that deposit. And then obviously your deposit, your rental income, obviously above your premium, and then you can just eat off the top. And then even with that, what I then tell people, if you're in a position to do so, if you come from a wealthy family or you just hit the jackpot, you have a lot of money in the bank, is that if you're in a position not to live off that rental income, pay it all back. If your bond repayment is 5,000 Rand, your rental income is 7,000 Rand, don't just pay the 5,000 Rand, pay 7,000.
Because it eats off your interest.
Eats off your interest, because not banks do. So when you're paying, is that when you pay money, or your monthly installments, a portion of it, usually a small portion, repays the principal amount that you borrow. And then a big portion just goes towards servicing the debt. So your principal amount, which is what the interest is charged on, decreases so slowly. And that's just a mechanism that the bank uses to keep you in these 20-year loans and paying forever, and you end up paying almost double your loan amount after 20 years.
Yeah.
But if you're saying that, okay, cool, bank, of that 5,000 Rand, I know 2,000 Rand is an interest service, and then 3,000 Rand is towards my principal amount. Above and beyond the 3,000 Rand towards my principal, I'm going to give you an extra 2,000 Rand to pay off my principal. So you're now paying 5K as opposed to 3K against your principal amount, and you're servicing your 3K debt. And then that, you're going to see years, your 20-year bond repayment turns into 13 years. Just because your base amount decreases so much quicker.
Okay, just for somebody who doesn't understand, because I have to think about it also. So for our guests, so the principal amount is the initial amount
That
which
you
you agreed upon.
Yeah.
Then afterwards, there's an amount that you pay for, which is basically the interest over the number of years.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, guys, you got that, right? So let's say, for instance, you bought something for 100K to make it easier.
Yeah.
Then your interest rate was 20% for easy numbers. So your 100K is your principal amount, but then the 20%, which is the 20K in this case, would be the interest. But remember, this is compounded over the number of years.
Yeah.
So if you do a compound calculation over that, you might find that it's almost, if it's over 20 years, you might end up paying over double.
Yeah.
Over the double, so you might end up paying about 220 somewhere there, somewhere around there, and that's the total amount you end up paying. But if you actually eat off the principal amount, it could cut down the number of years.
Yeah.
So I think in simple math,
Yeah.
in simple terms, that's what actually happens. So maybe let's try and wrap it up with the final question, Adrian.
For me, and I think we've touched on it here in the Trips and Traps as the conversation is flowing. I first want you to touch on your first job. Maybe touch on, because the topics that we've also touched on as TMC is like from which figures, but this is TMC was created for Abantu Basekasi. There's conversations for gents from Ekasi. So touch on that. Secondly, touch on your first day of high school, first day of uni, and then first day at your job, and what was your first job, and then lastly, what advice do you have for youngsters who are just entering the job market?
Okay, there's quite a lot there. So, kumfana semlazi. Yabo buenza andile makubalo ukomozo unyanga uthole ujiyana senganduna. Yabo lesesinye nje sinenhlamba phakathi ngoba ngeke ngisasho kuhlonipha abalaleli. Yabo, but life being life, my parents separated when I was still young. My mom took her stuff, took her children. We moved across town, Sayitoti, and then I spent the rest of my life, well, 2 days in Doti. That's where I currently am. Crazy enough, I don't think I've actually, how many people have I told this? Not a lot of people have told this. My dad was actually one of the first black town planners, first apartheid. Just by chance, so he was involved in majority of the RTP around Durban, Omaska, So when I'm Lando, I'm loyal. That's my pride and joy. Took a lot from my dad, learned a lot from him, a lot of respect. And then studied at Doti primary school, high school. First day of primary school, crazy. You know, can you imagine? Was in Lokshini, around Ogonga. It's tough, it's geesy, it's dead.
I'll say that now, guys.
You know,
the accents.
Groom them young. Clear example, guys.
You know, yeah. So that was that. Worked hard. You know, I wouldn't say that I was always the guy you see now in front of you. I was lost for a lot of years. I was confused. New environment, new people. Just you know, but at some stage, again, we also asked me about the first year of high school. So, got through art primary school basically. Yeah. But I always knew I was a bright kid. You know, I was always capable. I was always smart. Sorry to say that about myself. You know, I was always a bright kid. I was always in the 18 for sports. I was always capable. But I'm not taking things too serious.
Yeah.
So then, come grade 7, minus like keep my award, what. I'm not mentioned anyway. I was like, no man. I know I'm capable, but I'm not receiving the nod.
Yeah.
Something needs to change, and what needs to change is me. So my first day of high school, full transformation. Went from a chubby little boy in grade 7, I hit my little growth spurt over the December holidays, get to high school, I'm tall at school, you know? And then the physical change manifested in my emotional changes, intellectual changes. I just matured over December because there was something in me that I knew that was more than what I was currently doing. You know, so I took the time, invested in myself, and that was it. My parents gave me the leeway to find myself first and foremost, and once I found myself, they encouraged me to run the case, you know. And then that was my first year, first year of high school. Fortunate enough to captain a couple of sports. Fortunate enough to become deputy head boy. Mentored in the following year, the first black head boy into the school. So those are the other things I'm very proud of. And then going to varsity, yeah.
Which school, if I may ask?
I'm at Church High School. Alma mater, pride and joy.
No, don't worry. I always make I always make sure we mention our schools.
Yeah,
No, man, that's it.
And your first day, your first job?
My first job. My first job I ever did was coaching. Yeah, I love rugby, so I started coaching rugby. I've been coaching rugby for the past almost 10 years. And then post varsity, my first job was actually working for an insurance company that I won't say the name, but yeah, worked for a short-term insurance company. I did that for a couple of months, and then I was like, okay, cool. I have other capabilities that have been also offered in the job market. This is now mid last year, COVID. I'm like, okay, cool. I got a job. I got a pay slip, but I can do more. Resign. Boom. Mid COVID. Resign. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a great lesson. But I need to take the plunge. Took the plunge. Went to another insurance company, long term. They gave me exposure to investments, A, B, and C, and so forth. Did that for a while, and because God is faithful, 6 months into that, and this is giving up a salary to go full commission in the middle of COVID, where no one wants to take out insurance, where no one wants to invest any money, no one has faith in the financial system, everyone is in taxes.
Yeah.
You know, forego my salary, going to full commission, God being God, I get a phone call from the company I'm now working at. So listen, you're a young guy, we see something in you, talented guy, come over. So yeah, made the step again. Now I'm at one of the biggest investment companies in the country, one of the most successful branches of that company in our region. So it's been a great journey. It's been a challenging journey. But if there's, like you asked me, if I can give someone advice about the current job market, is take the plunge. If you're in a position to do so, take the plunge. You might not start off where you want to be, but I know I was also one of those people that when I started applying for jobs, all the jobs I thought I was competent to do, they want 2 years experience, 3 years experience, 5 years experience. And I'm like, but this is an entry-level salary. Why do you want 5 years experience? But it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? We can't change the job market. Those are the challenges that we face currently in South Africa. It is what it is. So go humble, fair, be diligent in your efforts. And when you get a job, even if it's not the one that you might want, be diligent, be present, give it 100%. Treat that job like it's the one that you do want, because the people around you will see it.
Yeah.
You know, your energies, be present, show up correctly. You know, the effort that you put in will pay out. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but in the grand scale of things, and I'm sure, gentlemen, you also work very hard to be where you are, and you can attest to this, that your effort will pay out, you know. And if, I know you didn't ask me this, but just last Jay before we go, I'm a big fan of Kobe Bryant. I'm a big fan of the Mamba mentality, and the one thing he speaks about his training regimens, where all his peers are starting training at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and he's already awake at 4 a.m. in the gym, working like every single day. He said that within that first year, 2 years, it didn't show a difference between him and his competitors. But after working an extra 5 hours, 4 hours a day, for 10 years, 15 years, the gap just keeps getting bigger. And that's what it is. And that's testament to anything, not just sports, even in your workplace. If you're going to put in an extra effort, your boss might not see it right now today, but the gap between you and your peers will grow incrementally. I love that.
Okay, no, that was.
It kind of feels like compound interest on a
Yeah.
mutual level.
There's
100%.
no point interest for your career, yeah, basically. I think, guys, just a disclaimer: we're recording outside, so sound quality is a bit compromised, so we do apologize for that. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we can't control it, but you know what? It's a lovely day. It's a bit cold, a bit chilly in Durban, but you know what? It was actually worth it. Getting out here to have a conversation and actually bring all the knowledge for you guys. From here with our sponsors, Eta Radio and Capital Mhlanga actually taking us under the wing and allowing us to do this. And look, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, reach out, poke, everything.
Everything, and big shout out to our guest Enza. I like the fact that you touched on insurance, because insurance is one of the topics that we will be touching on. I think it's the third iteration of financial well-being.
Yeah.
So we would love to have you back for that insurance piece.
And please, for the guys listening to this, in your comments, throw in a question, throw in a suggestion, whatever. I will try to go through as many comments as I can, try to engage a couple of people, hope where I can help, maybe point in the right direction you can speak to. But if anything, guys, don't take everything that I've said as actionable right now. If there's one thing to walk away from this conversation, is go consult a professional. Go see someone, go seek help. And I promise you from there, everything will start making sense.
100%.
Right.
On that, we can close it off. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the support.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Peace.